Hello YouTube, this is Charles and I've got a toy review today actually. Something I promised I would do a while ago and for a lot of reasons didn't get around to it. The Deno Denkamen sword. And as you can see, this is a pretty beefy box. So let's take a quick look at that. Basically. Trying to get all of it in frame. And look at the back. So this comes about because there's a plot point in Kamen Rider Deno where the singularity point, which is Nogami, inadvertently or deliberately forms what's called a junction point, which, while it does something good, it also kind of dissolves his bond with the Taros, which are, the Imagine guys here. And Ryutaro, which is the gun form up here, comes up with an idea for creating an item that will allow Nogami to still use their powers without the Taros possessing him. So, and he comes up with this, the Denkamen sword, or the heavy spinning Denkamen sword. So I'm going to take a second to get this out of the box and we'll go from there, alright? Out of the box, the Denkamen sword is actually quite nice, as you can see here. Well, I'll do the size comparison at the end of the video so everybody can get a good look at this thing, but as you can see, we're going to zoom in here on the mask. That's the first most important thing. The four main masks are, in fact, represented. You have Momo's mask, Yorotaro's mask, Kintaro's mask, and Yugun's mask. So I'm just going to pan through this very, kind of show this off a little bit. Let's kick back on. That's nice. Go through here. Now you can see the individual marks for the Taros are on the blade, although it's kind of hard to make out Momo since it's red, but it's there. This, of course, actually this part of the sword, this tip here, is separate from the rest of the unit in box. And it's got a decent amount of weight to it too. Kind of tips rubbery plastic. So I'm just going to zoom in so you can look at this a little bit better. If I can. Nice little detail. That, of course, is where something important goes. Nice little molded detail all the way through to the handle or brake, I guess I call it. I think it's a brake. I don't know if you guys, but Momotaros' mask can actually split open a little bit, so that's a nice little touch. And down on the other side, you kind of see most there. It's maybe a little bit easier to tell that it is Momotaros' mark right there. Now that's released. That's released for something. The back, you can see there's a little bit of a table here, lots of little details. Down here is the on-off switch for the electronics, and the electrical battery compartment is right here. You're going to need 2 AAA batteries for this. And for some reason, you also put the handle down like that if you want. Sorry, you didn't see that. I'll zoom out here so you can. Basically, the act of pulling this out will rotate it even without the battery on it. So, the act of pulling the lever, I'm not sure if you heard me, will rotate this without any sound being on. So, The Denkamen sword is does have something in common with an earlier weapon, the Fai's blaster, which basically Fai's can use to become his ultimate form, and theoretically that's what this does as well, but as I'll cover it a little bit later in the video, that's not exactly true. Okay. And the mask opens up like that. So, in order to properly henshin, of course, you need to do a few things. First, you need to come under here, of course, I think, and turn her on. So this thing, along with the Fai's blaster gear, has the ability to transform the rider directly, or the individual who is the rider, directly to their super form. Later, Kamen Riders just have the guy do it via, a neat little different transformation effect. But in order to transform to liner form, you need the rider pass, and you will insert it right here, if it will cooperate with me. I'll see. Okay, it actually did that time. Speaker, of course. I'm not sure if it's how easy it's going to be able to see here. But, yeah, right there underneath the guard, right where my fingers are. It's showing up there, I think. Yeah, right here is the speaker. So, and there, where my finger is the trigger for everything. So let's give it a listen, shall we? That's Momotaro's, of course. Okay. Now that we have the pass in and we are properly transformed, we can use this thing to, we can recycle through the sounds and such. Euro Rod. Okay. Okay, now interesting fact, according to the Wikia, all of these attacks fall under the name Densha Giri, which is basically what happens, what Nogami calls the attack, and when he uses it for the first time against two Mold Imagine. I'm getting there, wait a minute. So, of course, that name, which translates to train attack or train slash, is met with dismay and disbelief by the other Taros and Naomi on the train, because it's just kind of considered boring. But the actual the attacks used by the Taros through the weapon here all have different names. Momotaro's is considered the Denkamen slash. Yorotaro's attack is called Denkamen attack. Kind of. Well, yeah, I guess that would fit for him. Kintaro's, when he channels his might through the weapon, calls it the Denkamen chop. And I believe in the commercial, which is the only actual footage I remember seeing of the attack, the guy just brings the Denkamen thing like this. Okay. They all say something like that if you linger on their mask for a while. And I believe his is the Denkamen stab? Or shot? I think it's the shot. Yorotaro's is the stab, which he basically does with his rod. Not like that. So Yeah, I'm sorry. Well, listen, if you can't hear me, just speak up and I'll be able to try and for you. This weapon actually has, and I'm just going to switch it off because I don't need to hear any more Taros talking to me. Thank you very much. Okay. Has kind of an odd place in rider history. I'm just going to zoom out a little bit. As I said before, this is supposed to be the final attack or the final weapon, or the final weapon form of Deno. The final weapon and the final form. But it turns out to be neither one, and the reason for that kind of is, well, it's Decade's fault. And partially Nogami's. You see, while Nogami enters the final battle in Deno, the final episode, literally in this form, he doesn't remain in that form. He actually changes back into sword forms, and there's a combined effort from the Taros plus Sieg, who's the fifth movie, imagine, to kill the Death Imagine, who's the final boss, basically. Momotaros basically does his extreme slash thing, and the tip of the sword bounces off between the different Taros, who energize it and strike the Death Imagine. Even Kamen Rider Zeranos, in his Vega form, shoots it from his crossbow as part of the attack. It's actually pretty cool. And Momotaros calls that the extreme slash final version. But it's not final version because 2 years later we have Kamen Rider Decade. And Decade is interesting because Tsukasa and company go to Deno's world and they run into Momotaros, who's now the base, the main of Deno, as opposed to Ryotaro. Or Ryotaro, yeah. Nogami has kind of moved on. And there's some hijinks and such, but at the end of the episode, the Decade crew moves on, and they have a visitor in the studio. But what happens during the movie, the Decade Deno movie, is that we see the 8th and what is considered the true final form of Deno. Or maybe it's not. I'm not sure. The 8th form is called SuperClimax. Yeah, you can make little jokes. And it's basically the inclusion of Sig to Climax form. And basically Sig takes the form of two wings that appear on the back of the Climax form suit. And the actor in the suit basically has to turn around and face away from the camera and kind of like pantomime, move his arms and legs a bit to indicate when Sig is talking. And what Sig does is he doesn't really add any much power, but he does add a lot of agility and speed, basically powering up the Climax form's rider kick to the point where it's exceedingly more dangerous than anything else. Well, that's where it gets confusing, because Decade also gets his power up later on in his series, and he becomes complete form. And complete form, like Decade himself, is kind of overpowered. Decade, for the record, can transform into any other rider or any other form of any other of the main riders. Not any other rider. But he can transform to the other main riders and use their various forms and weapons. Like the Autova Jin from Phys, and also Phys' Accelerate form. His super form, Complete, which he uses with the K-Touch, also grants him the ability to summon puppets or simulacrums of the other rider final forms. Although we don't see Kugas, and that's important. For Deno's, he actually uses it in the crossover with Samurai Sentai Shinkenger, when he summons Liner form to unsuccessfully try and kill one of the Kaijin from Shinkenger that they're going to ultimately have to kill. And the reason it's important is because, well, you know, all the other riders receive the K-Touch. The way the K-Touch works is you basically, once you've changed and done all that, you press the symbol of the rider, and I believe you press the Kamen Ride symbol, the symbol of the rider, and then Decade symbol, and it will say out Kamen Ride. Or it'll say the name of the form and then Kamen Ride. I think, like for Yuki, it says Survive, or for Phys, it says Blaster. And then that will allow him to generate like the puppet, and then using his whatever the Decade's little card holder case gun sword thing. I forgot what it's called for the life of me. He can use that as a weapon, basically, to or a stand-in for whatever the final form's rider to the weapon it uses. It, like, I mean, in this case, he can use it as Decade can use his weapons, his card case's sword form, to act as a stand-in, as a prop for the Denliner's Denkamen sword. Sorry if I mangled that for everybody. But during the superhero Tyson movies, or during the that take place at the end of Decade and afterwards, the writers are faced with a new threat called the Neo-Sentient Organism, which is this big monster thing from the old Showa era movies. And Decade, D-End, their Kuga, and Kivara face off this thing and don't really have a lot of success, even though they're facing it and its attendant monsters. And Deno, or Momotaro's here, brings the other Heisei riders in to even the odds. And after they get rid of all the weaker monsters, they try to kill the sentient organism, and it resists, and it basically beats them up. And so Decade pulls out K-Touch and goes complete form. And at the same time, he manages to upgrade all of the other riders with him to their final form. And that's important because two of the riders do not have the same final form anymore. Ryuki still has Survive, Akito is still Shining, Fai's is still Blaster, and so on. But Kuga, the Decade Kuga, is upgraded from Ultimate form to Rising Ultimate, which is now his canonical new final form, I assume. And Deno here goes from regular sword form to SuperClimax form, bypassing Liner form entirely. And of course they kill Neo-Sentient Organism later on. But it's important to point that out because the SuperClimax form doesn't use this. It actually uses the Dengasher. Although this is, I guess, still part of it somehow. And I suppose you could reason out by saying that the Denliner form is the final form of Deno as when it was controlled and populated by Nogami. But when it became Momotaro's, he doesn't need this form anymore, even though he could probably use it. And he can go straight to SuperClimax form, assuming he gets the other Taros to play along. Which kind of leaves me in a weird place with this. Should you get it, or where do you get it if you're a collector? That kind of boils down to your goals as a collector. As you can see, it's a very nice piece. Very well painted, very well detailed. The lights and sounds are good. You don't actually even need the Rider Pass to activate Liner form. It's just, I did that for show accuracy. However, I'm not exactly sure if it doesn't quite have the same, I guess, regal bearing or awesomeness, the cool badassness of some of the other weapons, like the Perfect Zector, which was talked about before, and which I was wielding at Metrocon. This thing doesn't quite have that same aura as the Perfect Zector, but the aura it does have is unmistakably Deno. I mean, I assume this is how the gun form would be used. I assume it's been a while since I've watched Deno. What with the sound effects and the correct voice is being coming out. And I don't know, I'm not exactly sure at the time of this recording what the overall rarity or scarcity of it is to get this. My advice would be buy the Deno belt first, buy the Dengasher first, buy the Zero Nose belt and the Zero Gasher first, those things. And probably buy the Kitaro's phone. Once you have those, 5 things done, you're really only down to this, the Movie Rider belt, and the Zeranos has a final weapon called the Denonym Buster, which I haven't been able to find yet. there's also a Master Pass set, which I believe is built off the Master Liner thing. I would buy this after I would buy the first 5 things I noticed. The 2 belts, the 2 gashers, and the Kitaro's phone. I would buy this ahead of the Deno Buster and the TX Master License. Personally, because I think it has a lot of fun, like, play value. But if you're looking for something that's going to convey the, like, you know, for the full BA value of Deno, you're probably not going to find anything I had. So, but this is really a really good strong piece. I'm glad I have it. And now, because I've prattled on long enough, let's see how big it actually is. So, doesn't really matter. You can see the DVD case of a average DVD. You can see against it. It's actually about 3 DVD cases high, at least I assume. Don't matter about, don't pay attention to just the title there. You can see how kind of wide it is. If you don't have a DVD case, here's something you probably will have: an Xbox controller. You can see this is a pretty big piece. And lastly, because I hate him so much, here's Alpha Bravo from Transformers Combiner Wars. Now that he has been kicked out of Superion, you can see how big he is compared to this. And yeah, really, that's about it. So, I know it took a very, very long time, but that is my review of the Denkamen sword from Kamen Rider Deno. I hope everyone who made it to this point enjoyed it and was able to answer some of your questions. If not, please ask them in the comments section. I will try to respond. Yeah, I really like this. And it surprised me how much I liked it. Okay, guys, I will talk with all of you later. Bye.